Welcome to my June wrap-up, starting with The Butterfly Garden by Hutchison. Okay, so this was recommended to me by someone who recommends me really good books, honestly. I know they liked it, but I feel like the writing was wildly disjointed, and I can't decide if that was a stylistic choice or if that was something the author was struggling with throughout the process of writing that. The characters weren't likable, and I could tell that was like a process through the book, like in and of itself. But I feel like there's a difference in this character isn't meant to be likable or unlikable, sorry. But I felt like some of the characters you're meant to like are still just not likable, and it's like, I just don't think it's a good book in some ways. It's also just, in general, not a book I would recommend, because I do see it on Book Talk from like time to time, and people are like recommending it, and they're also not talking about like that is a actually very heavy book with a lot of triggers and like need for like a content warning, trigger warning, something in it. I feel like people should maybe do their homework in it, because that book kind of goes just right into it. There is not like a warning. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure that it just went right. Yeah, it goes right into it. You get, the like to my mom and dad, and then you get a 1 page and then right into it. There is no content warning like at all. So I do suggest that people do their homework on the content, because it's very heavy. For those who might enjoy like heavy thrillers, perhaps, but because I know my friend really enjoyed it. Some of those stylistic choices in the writing in general was not my cup of tea. However, I did really enjoy Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. It was an emotional and thoughtful story. I especially enjoyed Marcellus's POV. That was just like a big highlight for me personally. The story itself like interweaves like people throughout the story, and by the end of it you see where like each person kind of like interconnects. It's like one of those types of stories. You'll see that like commonly in like lit fic, so if that's kind of like your thing, I think you'll like really enjoy it just in general. I will say though, a story that for me might have been like a 5-star, this just ended up not being one, because it really does drag in a lot of ways, despite the interesting story, and I feel like that dampens it in general for me. And I really hated that, because like the story itself and the synopsis is really interesting, but just the way that sometimes the storytelling itself drags dampens it. The next book that I wrote was Children of Dune. I don't know why, I just really like the covers that they did for this. It's really cute. Bigger than Dune Messiah, smaller than Dune itself. This to me was like the weakest of the trilogy that I wrote. Again, I know that there's more. This will be the last one that I read of any of the Dune books, just because. Okay, so for me, I think that Dune is definitely an epic. I do agree with the people who talk about like in the sci-fi world how like Dune is considered an epic. I would agree with that. However, I feel like when you move on to Dune Messiah, it feels like a lot of the powerful storytelling of Dune falls away into verbose world building for Dune Messiah, to kind of build into like for like a stepping stone for Children of Dune. Except when you get into Children of Dune, it lacks a lot of what Dune kind of is, and then it lacks the world that we kind of built in Dune Messiah. So for me, I feel like Children of Dune just kind of suffers from wanting to make the other characters finally getting like that main character build in that Paul was the whole time. Except that feels hollow, because again, if you read the other two, you know that Paul now is kind of like a background character in Children of Dune. So then like everything kind of just feels hollow. Like, well, why did all of this happen for this now to occur? It just, yeah, I feel like for me personally, Dune should have ended, if not at Dune, at least at Dune Messiah. So yeah, like when I finished Children of Dune, to me, I'm finished. I don't really want or have a need to keep going. But I can also see for people who were really interested, again, like look at Star Wars, there are tons of books and things that aren't even considered canon. And people will just keep reading and keep reading. So like I get it. Yeah, but like I will not keep going. I also read The Unmothers by Leslie J. Anderson. I did not like that. The pacing of the book is terrible. The characters in the story are so flat. Yeah. Also, again, one of my big things that I just dislike so much is a thriller and or mystery being categorized as horror. Except when you read it, it's either not really anything horror or horror-esque to it, or like the horror is something so simplistic that it's just not. Yeah, I don't like that. And this is one of those books. So this book, you get to like the last 10% and it's, first of all, so rushed, it's just pointless. And then secondly, you kind of get finished with this story. And first of all, you feel like there's no plot. I don't really see, honestly, where the horror aspect was to this book, just for me. Also, again, if you want to read The Unmothers, check the content. But also, for the content that is in there, there's a lot of like apology type wordage for said content. I know I'll get flagged if I say the word, but yeah. I would not recommend it, first of all, for that, but secondly, because the book itself is just not good. So that was just my opinion. I did get to read, or at least start this series, Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Okay. I am telling you, if you ever put a cat on your book, I'm going to get it. Don't know why. It's like my thing. This is actually, for me, the first one at least. It's such an interesting style of story. And I like the way that they try to convey the emotions with each. Because you get like multiple stories within this book. I think this one has 4. And I think the second one second. Yes, 4. And I also think the second one has 4. So they'll probably each one, because I think there's 4 or 5 now, get you 4, like, stories. My thing, though, with this book, and also with because I also got to the second one, is, and maybe this is my issue because of the format, but you get these different reasons for traveling in time. But despite there being different stories, like, each one is different, but they each go in time, they feel repetitive. Even though the stories, each one is, like, good, they still feel repetitive, like, in the format. It's so cut and dry. I feel like by the second to third one, I was kind of bored. So then and I know I saved my DNFs for later. I did do 2 other books before I got to Tales from the Café by the same author. But even with 2 other books kind of between getting to this one, I still pretty much have the exact same thoughts for Tales from the Café. These are good stories and they're impactful emotionally, but at the same time, despite being different, it still has like a repetitive nature to it. But that could also just be my issue with being like, okay, well, we're still going back in time. Like, it's the story itself. You're going back in time and you're having this thing happen with the person's emotional viewpoint to a situation. I'm trying not to spoil it without, with expressing it. But they're still good. It's just, I feel like maybe there's like a way to like somehow write a way to switch this up. But, so yeah, they're good. But also I just was kind of like, okay, this feels so repetitive. So like I really enjoy both of those, but I feel like I won't continue for like maybe a month or so. Because I could tell by the time I got to the second book, I was like, I like this, but I also don't want to like be annoyed if I go to any more. So I may have to have like some space between the next one. I did finally I've been wanting to read this for a very long time. I finally got to read Freedom is a Constant Struggle, Ferguson, Palestine, and the Foundations of a Movement by Angela Y. Davis. This is incredibly written, and the information within this, because this is a collection of, I think it's like interviews and things she's, written and things like that. You will absorb this and it will deeply resonate, at least with me. And I think with anyone who reads this, it will deeply resonate with you and you will sit with this. This is not a book that you will just like read and sit away. When you read this, you will sit with it, and it's great. It's very, very good. I don't even know if you would call it a criticism, but because it is like multiple things and they put it in that book, it's like a collection, you will find certain like commentary is repetitive because it's separate times that she has spoken on things, but put together into one thing. So similar commentary, but at different points. So that was kind of like a thing of just repetitiveness, but to me, it was still worth listening to and worth kind of going back on in that repetitiveness. And I would highly recommend anyone to read that. It was truly, truly a good book. I did read, I can't find it. I think I let someone else just go ahead and take it before I film this, but I read a poetry book called Falling Toward the Moon. I'll put it up here like I do when I do audiobooks, but it's called Falling Toward the Moon by R.H. Sin and Robert M. Drake. I rated that thing 1 star. That is literally just a collection of Tumblr thoughts. I can't even call that a collection of poems. I finished that collection, and like I said, it's 2 different writers, poetry writers, poets. And just, even after both of them, because it's like split in half, like I said, it's a collection of Tumblr thoughts. I feel like I was just scrolling Tumblr the whole time I was reading it. I listened to Careless People, a cautionary tale of power, greed, and lost idealism. Okay. I typed up, I don't normally type reviews on my Storygraph, unless it's like a DNF. I'll kind of like do like a little tidbit of like why I DNF'd. And then usually like if I do like finish a book, I don't really do many DNFs, many reviews. I wrote out a review for this because I was so annoyed by the end of this book. And I we already know Meta is like a horrific company, right? We already know Zuckerberg is a horrific person. Like, these are not new thought processes. So like going into this book, you're kind of thinking, okay, so what are you going to present to the table? So this book doesn't enlighten the reader to these facts. Like, unless you've been living under a rock, right? So instead, what you end up with, is like a long-winded account from what kind of gives the vibe of like a disgruntled employee, or well, ex-employee now, sorry, who now wants to kind of position themselves as a whistleblower far too late, to kind of like soften their image going forward outside of their like Facebook work life. That's truly what it feels like when you're like listening. And I'm assuming like if you're reading physically the book. So truthfully, like, this is like an incredibly privileged woman talking about other incredibly privileged people and the horrific things that occurred during her time at Facebook. And now what she wants is to pose as a savior by recounting her times there, and doesn't seem to realize, like, really at any point, that it shows her complicity in the matter. And I'm like, for me, even if a small percentage of the memoir is truth, this author is a detestable person. And she should not be held to a high standard for calling out Zuckerberg and the colleagues she worked with, but instead, people who read this should see this for what it truly is. And it's someone who saw that Meta continues daily to be called out for its horrendous acts and didn't want to have their name be attached without getting ahead of it without their own call out. So for me, this author is not a good person, but another shark in the water that got one last payday. That's what I wrote. So it's like, if you see me looking down, I wanted to make sure that I got all of the correct feelings back out on this review as well. Because when I finished that book, I was so perturbed. Because it's just, you can just feel like just the privilege oozing out of that book. And it was just like, I cannot stand this. Yeah, no, I did not like that at all. Another book that I have big feelings on at this point. A Monsoon Rising. Thea Guanzon. Okay. If you follow any of my accounts past YouTube, you will know that I like Raylo and that whole like little fandom, all that. Okay. And I like Star Wars just in general. So yeah. But from time to time, if I know that like a book is like Raylo orientated, something like that, I will pick it up if it sounds decent. Raylo and fantasy sounds great. I picked up the Hurricane Wars. I have a video in past that has my opinion on that. We're going to move forward because I'm going to preface this. When I read and then had to move into listening to the audiobook because, yeah, side note, I had to move into audiobook to do 2.5 to not DNF this. Yeah. But I'm going to preface this with I had to write 4 pages of thoughts by the time I was done with that. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot. I'm going to be honest too. I could probably do like a video in itself. And I do see on Storygraph, there's like a you know, like how like they'll have, you know, you can click on it if it's like a series and there'll be more. There's another book. So there's going to be another book of that. And I will probably end up doing like a video in and of itself of like a full opinion when I'm done with that series at this point. Because I could do a video in itself on the failure of that series. Because, oh my goodness, the talent this author has and the failure that this story is because it lacks so greatly is just sad. It's just such a letdown. This is such a letdown. However, for the sake of the video, I'm going to try and condense my feelings here for the sequel specifically. Because the thing is, from Hurricane Wars to this one, this book had a higher rating. So I was like, well, I'm going to give it a fair shot. This is my fair shot. Despite it, within 2 chapters, you can still be reminded, just like the first one, that this is still being written like a fanfic. I enjoy fanfics. However, there is a difference, at least for me as a reader, in I'm going on to AO3 and picking up a book. For me, there is just a difference. I prefer books that have structures. This lacks in structure. There's other books that I have DNF'd because you can tell that it's a fanfic because of how it lacks in structure and how they just basically copy pasted, moved some words around, moved some names around, and I don't like that. I don't enjoy that kind of stuff. If other people do, that's fine. I'm very big on like people can like what they like, enjoy what they enjoy. I'm not going to judge you unless it's like problematic stuff. Then I'm kind of like, ooh, you know, but like I just have a preference on books and what I'm reading. This, you know, for me, I just feel like when it, like kind of back to the structure thing though, personally, when a book gets published, especially when you as a fanfic writer gets a book deal. If you get a book deal and all you're doing with that opportunity is continuing the fanfic style and you fumble this hard, that to me just feels so lazy. And it's really, really agitating when I know indie authors who try so hard and they never get that big break. And I know just writers who are still struggling years later to still get a big break and they don't get it. It's agitating. For me, at least. That's what bothers me. As for the story itself, this is still not enemies to lovers, and it annoys me when people or the publishers themselves are trying to push it as such. The odd way that this story tries to move about the romance is now just becoming boring. It's not even, like, move enemies to romance aside. It's not even like a will they, won't they? Because at the end of the first book, they get married and they hook up. So again, that's even like a past topic to like that whole will they, won't they. So the issue of the first book too with like the hookup, you even have this very uncomfortable, odd thing of like, we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't have done that. And it's very uncomfortable because the issue with this whole story too is the world building lacks so deeply that you truly get bored with the romantic side of them because they're acting as if they can't be together or even just have a fling they so clearly want from both sides. So even after them being married, even if it's just for political reasons, like per the plot, they still have opportunity and consent and consistent privacy. So it's such a non-issue at this point to not just have the romance. So the book, especially the second one, goes in circles, leaving you, the reader, exhausted and bored with constant boring reasons to dance around the romance. And it leaves it lacking in any ideology of like maybe like neediness, yearning, things that people might read for like an enemies to lovers like trope. It just lacks deeply. Also, something that I think a lot of people are missing as a topic for this book, the way intimacy in general is approached is incredibly uncomfortable, because this is not yearning. This is not neediness. This teeters into a much needed conversation we have got to have about fiction on the ideals of consent, because what happens is this needs to be like a conversation on the ideas of consent and what it truly means to give as well as take it away, and the importance of it. Because that issue in that book truly was upsetting for me reading through it. Not only at the end of the first book, but throughout this entire one, because the way that it is handled is honestly at times very horrendous. It just, yeah, it was not good. Also, there's like a whole point in the entire, like honestly, a point to the entire novel. Honestly, even the crux of like the pair itself, the plot, especially for Taslan, is like, a lot of this could truly be solved with like a hard but serious conversation. And instead, it just fails. Like, when you really kind of grasp that you could literally just like, and I'm not saying like the characters are in each other's heads, but it's like, okay, when you get in their heads as the reader and you realize this could all be solved with a conversation, and they would probably be like, okay, bet, we'll fix this, right? So when you, the reader, just see this very like, we're circling the drain, and I'm reading hundreds of pages of this, it becomes very draining as a reader, because all you see is the glaring plot hole as a reader. And then what the writer is doing is you're having characters going, nope, nope, nope. And it just becomes out of touch and very boring. And just honestly, by the time you get to the only interesting part of the third act, which is like this kind of like battle scene, not only are you realizing the author can actually write and write very well, now you're annoyed as a reader going like, you could have been writing this good the whole time, and instead all you're doing is fanfic writing for the sake of a very boring at this point romance plot. It is very much a letdown for someone who's trying to read a very interesting fantasy story, and instead all we're getting is something that's getting more boring by the page. So to be honest, it's just becoming a letdown, because what you're getting is, by the end of the second book in a series that is now becoming incredibly rushed at the ending for a cliffhanger for a third book that I'm assuming will end as a trilogy. I cannot imagine this going past a trilogy count. That would be insanity to me. So it's just, for me, I feel that this could have had so much more potential, especially if you would have given like world building a few more stakes to it and actually put the effort into the story versus, like I said, focusing on writing it like a fanfic to just make it suffer, to focus on a romance, to at the end, it's not even there. It's like, it's boring. It's not worth it. And like, I'm going to be honest, you're going to go into a third book. Obviously, it's on Storygraph, so I'm assuming it's set to come out. I can't imagine a third book fixing what the last two has like ruined at this point. It's rough. However, a good book I read after being aggressive on that. I try not to be aggressive at books, but those last two were rough for me this month. This one though, Martha Wells' Artificial Condition, which is a part of the Murderbot Diaries. Listen, I need to read more of these. This is like the second one, and I don't know how many are in this series, but I know there's like a good handful. Okay, it's just basically all this is it's you go on adventures with Murderbot, and Murderbot's great, but it's just as enjoyable as the first. There's also something just oddly cozy about this particular, like, very soft sci-fi story with Murderbot. I think it's because you kind of know what you're getting into. It's quick, it's fun, it's a nice, like, quick little adventure kind of thing. You know, you get an interesting plot, you get some new interesting characters, but you still have this one main character that you're following along throughout. It's great. I think it's something really fun. I really enjoy it, especially because I do try to do, like, heavier reads along the way, and then that's something to truly break up those heavier reads. I love the Murderbot series. It's really great. Can't wait for more, because I'm going to definitely grab more. Speaking of heavy, The Vegetarian by Hong Kong. Okay, first and foremost, please, content warnings. This is definitely, I mean, it literally won a Nobel Prize. So, and also the Booker International Prize. I mean, this has, like, tons of prizes, but, like, this is an intense book. It's a dark book. It's a shocking read. The characters are going to disturb you. The story is going to disturb you. It's upsetting for so many reasons, but it's also, the nuances to this is intense. When you understand the story and the way that it tries to delve into topics of control, your choice, your sense of self, reality even, the point that it truly drives is you will see why it is worth the awards it has received. I mean, that is one that, again, please look into the content first, but if that is something that you can, read it. That was one of, for me, a very, very good book. Okay. I am embarrassed to say that this is one of the best books of my month. Because I make fun of my friends very gently about how much monster romance they consume. And then I told them it's their fault. Yeah, it's their fault that I enjoyed this so much. So, Bull Moon Rising. Okay, so first off, Ruby Dixon I did not appreciate for Ice Planet Barbarians. I DNF'd the first one because there was no content warnings, and then it was very heavy in the content that it had. So I DNF'd for that. However, we love when an author grows. We love when this book starts off with content warnings. So, like I said, I want to give credit where credit's due, that this author, there was a content warning. We love it. We love to see it. Past that, Ruby Dixon's Bull Moon Rising, it was good. I don't know what you want me to say when it comes to that, other than you're going to get what you get with Ruby Dixon. There is a good amount of spice. But besides that, it was actually a decently held up fantasy novel. It was cute. It was fun. The side characters were great. I found out there's going to be a second one. That's apparently going to be like a series. From what I can tell of Ruby Dixon's kind of like, I guess, how she writes, it seems like she does not do standalones. She likes series. So I'm assuming, like, it will not even be two. They'll probably like a good, I would probably stick to that series. That it was fun to me. The fantasy element, it was, read it. It was good. I also read Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. Okay. It's a modern fairy tale. It was like a modern style fairy tale. It was short. It was simplistic. It was cutesy. It was all like, it was just one of those things where you throw it on. I did it audiobook style. I threw it on. I was playing a game during it. It was really over before I even realized it was so short. It was nice. To be honest, I feel like I hear a lot of people when we talk about, because I have like Grimm's fairy tales, right? And when people ask me, like, oh, do you like it? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, I don't like that because of, like, the way it's wrote, like that old style. Okay. If you like Disney movies, because, you know, fairy tales, I would recommend Thornhedge because it has a bit of, like, a modernized verbiage to it. So, like, I feel like that might be for people who maybe don't like the older verbiage. Maybe that would make it easier. And that's, like, how I feel like I would tell people who maybe want, like, fairy tales, but not the old writing style. This would be a good, like, I guess, middle ground. I will say the ending stumbled a bit for something so short. It just kind of, yeah. But otherwise, I thought it was a decent short. I also read 19 Claws and a Black Bird by Agustina Bazterrica. Okay. I read The Unworthy by this author. Unworthy was okay. To me, it was very mid-range, and I feel once again that collection of shorts as well was a very mid-range. And none of the shorts really popped for me, but they also weren't bad. It was a nice, enjoyable read, but nothing really wowed me. I do know soon I would like to read Tender is the Flesh. I think Tender is the Flesh is going to be more of all of the things that author has wrote. It's going to be the most in my wheelhouse of preference. But I am now, after 2 things of this author being kind of middle of the road, I'm kind of a little nervous now about Tender is the Flesh. So, okay. So I've been over time listening to the Witchwalker series, and it's like a kind of like, it's just like a spicy fantasy thing, just something simple. The author came out with kind of like I guess it's described as like, it's like I got a couple of shorts and some spicy reimaginings. I was like, okay, fine, throw it on. Okay, I don't know, again, this is probably on me. I don't know what I was expecting when it's expressed as, hey, here's some reimaginings and some short stories. I thought, okay, fine, reimaginings, but like the short stories, surely the short stories will be like to further the coming book, right? No. The whole 7 hours, even the new shorts were also just spice. So it was 7 hours of just smut. If you were like a big fan of this, I can see how maybe you would like it, but like, I guess I'm not that big a fan of the book or like the series, because I was just kind of like, okay, all right. All right. I finished this month out with Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. Okay. I read Kayake by the same author. I really enjoy Kayake. This is the same writing style. It's like, they're retellings, but they're like very soft and almost like lyrical in how she writes. It's very pretty. I listened to both, and I like the pretty aspect and how like lyrical the stories are told. I really enjoy that. My critique, and it's not really a critique, it's more like a personal preference, is I like books, because even big books can do this, where like the pacing is like pretty like, you know, like quicker. This author does not write with an intent to be fast. When I say lyrical, it is because she is going to flow that story the way she wants. And it is oftentimes very slow. But, I mean, the story gets where it's going to get, and it's very pretty in how it gets there. I just personally would like it a little bit faster, but that's just my preference. Despite that, the author's talent is, wow. It's just, like I said, it's a lyrical talent that is lost in this day and age in a lot of ways, and it's beautiful. Now, as for DNFs, this is probably going to make a lot of people mad. Sorry. I DNF'd Legends and Lattes. I've read other things too that are supposed to be like this like coming cozy vibes kind of thing, and they were fine. This might be too cozy, to be honest. I didn't see a point. I didn't really Yeah, Travis Baldtree's writing as well just didn't vibe for me. I wasn't really big into it. It just, none of it was my cup of tea. Nothing was working for me. I also listened to Butter by Asako Uzuki. I could not get invested into that story. I got about a quarter of the way in. The story was dragging, but it also didn't feel like it was going anywhere in particular. So it wasn't capturing me, and I put it down. Okay. I had this on my shelf for a while, and I mean, I've said it many times before, but I've been trying to get through all of my physical TBR to kind of break all that up. The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. Okay. I DNF'd it because I feel like authors have forgotten the rule of storytelling where you start as close to the action or the point of your like story as possible. So the beginning isn't like dragging or feeling boring to your reader. Now, hair in my mouth. That book is suffering because it's saying a lot, but nothing. Like, it's like, it's a lot, but you're just like, okay, what are we doing? Like, there's no urgency. There's nothing happening. I don't care. And I'm sorry, but if I'm like 3-4 chapters in and I don't care what's going on, you're not capturing your reader. Now, the thing is, you've got two characters blabbering on, doing different things, and those different things are just simply, it's not blending into a cohesive plot yet. And then by the time you get to letters, which are supposed to be like the crux of the story, I think, I don't care. I'm bored and I'm just DNFing. I DNF'd. Also, a big gripe to me was the characters, your two main characters, are supposed to be like around or at 30. So why are they acting so juvenile that it's jarring for me as the reader? Like, it literally was so jarring, it was pulling me out of the story, because I'm like, these are supposed to be, like, my age range characters, and I'm feeling like I'm reading, like, 18 to 24 age range. I did not like that at all. Just, that was, like, a personal gripe for me. Okay, Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. That book would have been far more interesting if it leaned more into the grotesque that I was promised and less into simply trying to sound peculiar for the sake of it. It just didn't gripe. I'll figure the word out. Grip me. Another one that I read listened to was Whispers of the Deep by Emma Ham. Ham or Ham, I'm not sure how. If multiple reviewers say at the beginning that the beginning is the better part of this quite long book, I cannot fathom what drivel is going to be, coming on for me. So I went ahead and DNF'd that. I couldn't, because it was already so boring. And then I was like, I saw a couple of reviews being like, yeah, the beginning is the better. Not today. Okay. One of my more like sadder DNFs was The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. I was not enjoying the prose at all, and that was so tragic to me because the synopsis just sounded so good, and I wanted to like it so bad because of that, but I could not get into that style of writing at all. Another one that's been on my shelf for a long time, What You Gonna Do by Avery Flynn. Listen, I'm a millennial, so I can say this. Stop writing your romance books in millennial terminology. It's so cringe to read, and it looks so bad. It's so, so bad. That, I was physically cringing. It was so terrible. That book was so bad. No. Also, when that in a romance novel means there's probably going to be spice, right? Like, at this point, we're well aware. Okay. That book literally was written as if that's going to be for, like, kids. It was so juvenile, and I'm just like, ew, no, we're not doing this today. No thanks. Okay. Jawbone by Monica Oeda. Oeda. Okay. This book, as someone with religious trauma. I wanted to like this book so bad. But sometimes literary horror doesn't work. This is one of those times. I had so many hopes for this book. It just, on paper, this sounds like the book for me. As I'm reading, it wasn't working for me. And I think, I'll be honest, I think it's because the characters were so young, because I'm learning for myself, like, young characters and me, just, it doesn't work. I feel like I'm not connecting to listening or reading if I'm doing audio or physical. I'm not doing the connection very well, and I think that was the problem for me. Another one that I read and DNF'd was Most Ardently, a Pride and Prejudice remix by Gabe Cole Novoa. Okay, this was my issue with this. I was really excited to read this. I mean, it's beautiful. The idea was there, all that. Okay. I've read Pride and Prejudice. I've watched Pride and Prejudice. We all know Pride and Prejudice at this point. But I'm going to be honest. I hate insta-love. If you are going to write insta-love while adapting a story that is the epitome of being the opposite of insta-love, I'm going to DNF your book. Because I feel like you did not do your homework before adapting a novel. Maybe that's petty. Sorry. Okay. How to Plot a Payback by Melissa Ferguson. Ugh. Someone suggested me that because, for one, it's a local author, and for two, the person that suggested it said that they read that in a singular day. If someone tells me they read a book in a singular day and it's not under like 150 pages, I'm going to assume it's a good book. However, I could not get past 2 chapters of that. It was, once again, extremely millennial, like coded in its verbiage, in the way that it was just awful. It was so terribly written. And I'm just learning, honestly. I'm just incredibly picky when it comes to romance writing in general. But like, this one was cringy. Like, I feel like it's not picky to just not want to read something cringy. Sorry. And then the last one that I DNF'd this month, or of June, was Empire of Shadows by Jacqueline Benson. Okay. This is like the second type of book that has been like, yeah, we're like The Mummy, and I've been like, okay, sold, and not been into it. So that's probably just a me problem. But in all honesty, it was just boring. I found myself zoning out constantly. It's already like a long book. I was listening to it like as an audiobook, realizing it's over 16 hours, and then on top of it, it's going to be at least a trilogy, if not more. I'm not committing to that when I'm already zoning out. I wasn't doing that. So, those were all of my reads and DNFs for June. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe to me, and I will make another one for July soon. Thanks, and I will see you in the next.